Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for February 10th through 16th. This week I read 7 books, I watched 3 shows, and I listened to 1 book, and most of that was done in the name of Contemporary-A-Thon. In fact, all of the physical books I read were for Contemporary-A-Thon. Obviously the watching had nothing to do with it. And as for the book I listened to, you could probably consider it contemporary depending on exactly when contemporary starts, but it was just extra. First this week I read Fence Volumes 1 and 2, and it was delightful. This story follows Nicholas Cox, a young man who learns how to fence even though he is not a very privileged person at all, and is going to this boarding school, and if he doesn't make it onto the team, he doesn't get to stay at the boarding school. However, there's definitely some rivalry with somebody else who ends up going to the same school. There's not hate to love there yet, but I'm waiting for it. It's a very slow burn, I'm really enjoying it, and I just want the entire series to be out now so I can read it all now. Next I read The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. This is about 2 people that get stuck in an elevator at a hotel and basically end up telling each other why they're at the hotel. She's there because her sister's in town, they're celebrating that she made partner at her law firm, and he's in town to go to the wedding of his former best friend and former girlfriend, and his date ditched him at the last moment, so he ends up asking this girl in the elevator to be his date to this wedding. Yes, this is a fake-to-real relationship romance, and I enjoyed it immensely. This couple is also interracial, so that plays into the plot as well. And their chemistry was just delightful. How they processed feelings was just so great on the page. Because obviously you know going into this that at least one of them is going to have some repressed feelings and they're gonna have to work through them for them to get together at the end. And because it's romance, of course they do. That's the definition of a romance novel, is it has to end happily. Next I moved on to Graffiti Moon by Cath Crowley. I actually received this one as a gift from my friend Brandy over the holidays, so thank you for that, Brandy. This was on my wish list because, as you probably all know by now, I really adore Words in Deep Blue by Cath Crowley, but had never read any of her other books. This one takes place in an evening, and it kind of goes back and forth between a few different perspectives. One perspective is this girl who has just graduated high school and is going to go on to do an apprenticeship working at a glass-blowing place, as well as go off to college, but she is obsessed with this local graffiti artist who nobody knows who it is. Another perspective is that graffiti artist, although she doesn't know it. All of their mutual friends kind of get together that night and decide they're going to look for that artist. But there's a further twist in that these 2 characters have a past. In addition to all this drama, the graffiti artist is actually supposed to be doing a heist that evening, so obviously there's a lot going on in this very short novel. It had a lot of feelings, it had a lot to do about art. I really enjoyed it. I just really like Cath Crowley's writing. From there I moved on to Blue is the Warmest Color. This is a graphic novel. It is now also a major motion picture, as it told me right on the cover of the graphic novel. And this one starts in present day with a woman finding the diaries of her lover and her going through those diaries and getting more of a glimpse into her previous lover's life. This one is queer, this one is sad as hell, so know that going into it. But it's also beautifully drawn and it's translated. Next, I devoured You by Caroline Kepnes. This one has actually been on my TBR for a very long time. I am drawn to second-person narration because you don't see it very often, and it's hard to do really well in like 400 pages and people still want to read it. So I had put this on my TBR ages ago because of that factor, and then of course the Netflix series came out and I realized, hey, that book is still on my list, I should probably get around to it. The narrator in this book is Joe, a man who works at a bookstore and is stalking You. You being a girl that goes by the name of Beck. Basically, Beck comes into the bookshop, Joe falls in love with her immediately, decides that he really needs to be with her, stalks her, and then ends up dating her. This gave me Dexter vibes because even though Joe is a terrible, terrible person, you still wanted him to succeed at points. And I think that's because when we read books where it's a will they or won't they get together situation, we kind of root for it. So you end up rooting for them to get together even though you actually don't want them to get together because he is stalking her. Only after I finished the book did I realize that there's actually a sequel, so now I have to read that. This one is definitely dark, it's definitely creepy. The person that picked it for my online book club didn't realize how crass it was going to be. She thought it was a different book she'd read previously. So if you are somebody who is turned off by incredibly sexual and crass language, you're probably not going to enjoy this because there's a lot of it. It's dark, it's creepy, it's exactly what I wanted from it. My last physical book this week was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is only my second Taylor Jenkins Reid read, but I have 3 more of her books and I just want to devour them all. I knew going into this that this was going to be an incredibly sad book. The premise is laid out directly in the first chapter. Newlyweds are just hanging out, talking about how excited they are that they just got married, and she's craving Fruity Pebbles, so he goes out to get them and doesn't come back. This one alternates between her grieving for the loss of her husband, who she was only married to for 9 days, and flashbacks to their courtship. As the book goes on, you find out why his mom didn't even know he was married. In fact, you find out that her parents didn't know either, but that's not a shock because she doesn't really get on with her parents. One little thing that bothered me about this, however, is the fact that she's a librarian, which did not bother me. I enjoyed the fact that there was library rep in this book because yes. However, there was one day where they were closed for a holiday, but a bunch of people had messed up the world language section, and for some reason she was the one there putting it all back together, and I'm just like, that would never happen. That does not work for a librarian, that is work for a page. Pages would get stuck doing that. Also, in my mind, I was thinking you would call it the 200s, you wouldn't call it world languages. But I'm willing to believe that's a difference between how my library operates and maybe libraries in America would call it world languages. I mean, I have seen libraries take things out of order of where they go in the Dewey Decimal System and then just put them separately, so maybe. In any case, this one definitely made me cry in public, and I can't wait to read more of her books. On to what I watched this week. First, on Sunday, I thought I was going to get snowed into my friend's house when we were watching Fear the Walking Dead. The first season is only 6 episodes, so we finished that season and watched the first episode of the second season, and then from there the seasons get a little bit longer. I'm definitely bummed that one of the characters ends up leaving the show because I really like that actress from other things, but I'm still totally drawn into what's going on, and there's so much dimension to what could happen next. And we're gonna have to watch more of it soon, if not today. After about a month-long hiatus due to family obligations and being out of town and things like that, I finally got to see more Steven Universe. We watched the latter half of the 4th season, and I just love this show. Steven is such a soft boy, but he's also growing up and he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I just love him so much. We also got in a few more episodes from the first season of The West Wing. My friend actually turned to me during one episode and was like, "You realize that you're roped into watching all 7 seasons with me now?" And I said, "I assumed so, yes, of course." Because there's no point in starting a show with someone and then not watching all of that show with someone. As for what I listened to this week, I decided to go ultra nerdy and listen to the untold story of talking books. Yes, I was listening to an audiobook about audiobooks, and I'm so happy about it. This book was a deep dive into the history of audiobooks, so how they started, which was around the 1930s. It went through the different types of technology that had to be used. Audiobooks, especially in the States, used to specifically only be for blind people because publishers were worried that audiobooks would take over and they wouldn't get any money for them. But eventually they realized they could just charge people to buy audiobooks. And something that was not a shock to me whatsoever is the whole debate as to whether or not listening to an audiobook is reading has been a debate since audiobooks started being a thing. There are people on both sides of the camp. Obviously, I can understand some of the reasons why people might think that audiobooks aren't reading, because for them, they might not be able to pay attention enough to be closely reading and consider it reading. Other people object to narrators who actually do different voices for different characters because it takes away from them putting the voices in their own heads. I can understand why people don't think that audiobooks are reading, but personally for me, I don't think it's fair for someone else to tell you whether or not you are reading an audiobook. If you personally feel that you listening to an audiobook is not reading it, that's fine for you, but just don't tell other people that it's not. Because I listen very closely to my audiobooks and I feel like I'm consuming them the same way as reading. Obviously, it can be a slightly different experience because I'm hearing a narrator's voice, etc. But that doesn't mean I'm not doing a close reading of the text and figuring out the plot for myself as it goes on. If you're interested about learning about the history of audiobooks, this was a great book. It is very repetitive at points, but I did appreciate that it went through the entire history of audiobooks in the US as well as in the UK because they were kind of happening at the same time. So even though that seemed redundant and I feel like it would have been better if those sections were just put together, it was refreshing to see that the author actually included both of those perspectives instead of just making it a North American centric book. That's it for this week. If you somehow missed it, I daily vlogged every day of the Contemporary-A-Thon, so I will put that playlist down below for you. How did you do with Contemporary-A-Thon? If you were doing Contemporary-A-Thon, let me know down below. Have you read, watched, or listened to any of these? Let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!